What is up, guys? It's too windy to be on the water today, so we're talking tips, tricks, and techniques how to use these baits. Now this is an Apex walleye only inline spinning rig. These are great baits for any kind of water you're going to fish. This has a gold blade, it's heavily weighted, it has 2 beads and a big hook on the end. Now my ideal way to use these is that big hook on the end, tip that with a big worm. And don't be shy using too much worm. I always like to use full crawlers when using this kind of rig. You can use this rig with no bait, but a bait is always recommended by me. Tip that with a big worm, have that tail sitting off the end of the hook at least 3, 4, 5, 6 inches. You want that nice tail floating in the current as you drift along. That's going to entice some big walleye to hit. You can also use minnows for these baits. Get the biggest minnow you got in your box and lip hook it. That minnow is going to be kicking around there just like the worm, and it's going to produce some big fish. One of the techniques I like to use when using these rigs, because they are so heavily weighted, your retrieve speed is going to be what dictates how shallow or deep this lure goes. So if you do a really quick retrieve, this lure is not going to go too deep. If you do a nice and slow retrieve, this lure is going to get down deeper. So you got to remember, depending on where you're fishing, if you're fishing weed beds and you want this lure to be humming across the top of the weeds, do a nice quick retrieve. If you're fishing a 20-foot depth with lots of rocks on bottom, do a little bit slower retrieve till you feel those rocks and then increase it a bit. So those little tips and techniques are going to produce a lot more fish.